Alright, response video to the Amadeus guy. It's been a while. Yeah, busy. Lots of stuff. I don't know whether it's on the website or... Well, I guess I'll put it on the website just because it'll play better. Alright. Okay, so, yeah, you play this whole thing out. You use the fucktard word. You play along. And at the end, you just kind of lose it all and start calling me a liar and shit. And that's just bullshit. But whatever. Look, I'll paraphrase the argument here. You're using words like cult and dogma to describe points of view. And but what you're not going to be able to do is to take any of the people who have those points of view and demonstrate with any kind of real evidence that they are merely idol worshippers or hero worshippers, or that they're just worshipping some sort of cliche old-time religion or something, like the new science is the old science or something. The game really has changed, and you're just playing a word game. People haven't taken their morality for a couple hundred years now. We've been working on this morality thing. There was a couple of revolutions, the French, and then we had our revolution. People came up with new social contracts. It wasn't about serving the empire. It was about we the people. New concepts were invented, new ways of looking at the relationship between people and what an ethic was. And even the Jefferson statement, that one man's liberty ends where another man's begins. It's some of the one man's. It's about trespass, but anyway, so you're not trespassing until you're trespassing against somebody else. So anything you do is okay as long as there's no victim. Because we became aware of this idea of victim, and we became aware of this idea that morality isn't what a God says, especially in our societies. Okay, we separated our societies from religious dogma, became secular, at least are attempting to be, and so every individual starts making up their ideology. And you start going back again to this old, let's pigeonhole everybody, let's call these people liberal, let's call these people this, and you're doing that, and yet you're complaining that these words even exist, and so there's just a huge contradiction there. But it doesn't do any good. You're just destroying the meaning of words. There's no point in having words if you're going to break their meaning. Dogma is not a rational equation. If somebody's going to the trouble to have a rational equation and say, oh yeah, you don't judge all women, as a class. You let each individual woman define who she is and what she is. She's a human being first. And until she proves otherwise, you treat her as a human being, an equal human being, like every other human being. It's a logical, progressive thought process that can be argued back and forth about exactly what the balance should be. There's an obvious, here's a liberty, your right to drink alcohol, and then there's the liability, which is people's lives can be ruined if you drive drunk. And so now we have to come up with some sort of balance. How much are these lives worth that are ruined, that are put in jeopardy, that are, the horror of that? And how much is this liberty worth? There has to be a balance made between those things. And no one's making that balance based on dogma. There's nobody sitting there making a dogmatic statement, except for the people who traditionally always made dogmatic statements, the religious, who are just about prohibitions. They love prohibitions. But I don't think there's any progressives or any science types, any of these people in the cult of reason or the cult of rationality who are, just acquiring some dogma written on a piece of paper and applying it to their life. No, they're thinking about it, and they're doing the math. They're figuring out what is the value here. And so I don't even know what your bent is. I didn't cheat you any. You did say in a video you deleted that you don't think if your friend wants to beat a dog to death, you wouldn't stop him. You don't think a law should exist to stop him. You think that's just some sort of moral dogma that establishes the fact that it isn't acceptable for harm to be done to sentient creatures for no good reason. I mean, maybe there's an equation: cure for cancer, laboratory experimentation. I would argue that it doesn't matter whether it's hugely productive. It's wrong. I would argue slavery is hugely productive. Advances human race. You can save hundreds of years of time in terms of the progress you could create by creating a slave class, but that the price is too high. But your value equation is made of nothing. You're establishing nothing. You're saying all value definitions are automatically dogma, and they're not. They're just a rational equation, and obviously it's difficult to establish something as an absolute truth. All you can do is, like in any trial, you put the fact or the theory, you put it in the jeopardy chair, and then you have the trial, and you cross-examine this theory and see if this theory, first you see if there's any alternative perpetrator. You say, well, is it possible that somebody else could have committed this crime? Or is it possible that some alternative explanation besides this theory could be the truth? And I would argue that I'm really not going to waste my time explaining to you what sentience is, and that it substantially changes all equations in the universe. That we are not rocks, we're not plants, we're sentient creatures. Neurology. I'm just not going to waste my time explaining that to you. But I'm just saying, if we had the trial, I think it can be demonstrated that there's no alternative rational statement. You can harm sentient creatures. It's a negative if they are suffering. If there is no value created for their suffering, if it is pointless and needless and completely unnecessary and has no potential, no realistic potential to create anything of value, real value, to any rational being, that it can be declared wrong and a crime. I think that case could be made quite clearly, and I don't think you can come up with anything. I don't think if you put on your best, Clarence Darrow suit, that you're going to come up with any rational explanation to unravel the fact that suffering matters, and that wasting it, squandering it, disregarding it is fundamentally criminal. Yeah. Provide me a rational explanation. Provide me some sort of rational, sensible, reasonably coherent statement explaining how it doesn't matter if a sentient creature is suffering. And until you do that, this is just all bullshit. You're just playing word games to evade responsibility. I don't know whether it's... I have to project some sort of motive, right? Why would somebody want to... why would somebody want to take all statements of value and try to label them as dogma, as a cult, as essentially nonsense, unless they had some ulterior motive, like somehow they don't like the restrictions of having to be responsible for their existence. Have you done some horrible crime? Have you harmed somebody? Did you get drunk sometime and kill a family or something? And you're trying to find some rationalization to get out from under the suffocating realization that your life is shit now, that you have done more damage in the world than you could ever make up for. What exactly is your incentive to bend reason and rationality so to pervert it so where you can somehow come up with an equation that says it doesn't matter if something is suffering. I mean, it's just it is, and it is not a matter of intuition. Again, I'll argue this, but you know, the logical proof that we are witnesses to what consciousness is. We experience it. And it's just nonsense to say that experience, whether it's an illusion or not, whether it's an illusion created inside of the mechanism of a mind, it really doesn't matter. If a computer was capable of having this tangible connection between a sensation and a conception of it, we would have to have empathy for it. We certainly wouldn't want it to feel that. Why would we want it to feel something that we know from our own personal eyewitness testimony to be horrific and uncomfortable and nasty and crappy and shitty? So anyway, yeah. So I can't help but impugn you with a negative motive, because why would somebody who is obviously not, completely retarded, you do know English words, you do seem to be able to form complete sentences, why would that individual want to deny something so, I mean, it's almost as clear as the fact that water is wet. I mean, yeah, we invented the word wet to describe what water is. We invented words like harm and negative and destructive and horrible, and we invented those words to describe the very thing of some sentient creature going through an unpleasant experience. The case really doesn't have to be proven. The fact that a negative conscious experience can be endured is just a fundamental fact, as clear as water's wetness. Yeah, that's enough. All right. So see what you can do with that, buddy.